Hi. Welcome to the Thursday, February 9th, 2023 meeting of the Energy and Environment Conservation Committee. This is our first meeting ever, so this is a very exciting thing to have happen here. I'm Cynette Cavaliere. I am the chairperson for this year, so welcome to you all. The first thing that I did want to do, because there is a lot of new faces for all of us, is I wanted to go ahead and have us all do some introductions. I'll go ahead and start, just so you know. Cynette Cavaliere, Penfield resident since 2001. I am an environmental engineer with General Motors, which has pretty much been my entire career. I actually work remotely. I'm not managing any of the operations in Rochester. I actually have operations in 9 states that I help take care of. So very passionate about environmental activities, sustainability, and those sort of things. And I'm excited to be spearheading this team for the rest of 2023. So I don't know, Roy, do you want to go ahead and be second for us?
Sure. So I'm Roy Green. I am a Town of Penfield resident since 2005. I have over 20 years experience in environmental and sustainability, various roles, but my current one is an ESG manager for Cooper Companies out of San Ramon, California, but with offices in Victor, Henrietta, and Scottsville.
Great. Pat, would you mind going next?
Sure. I'm Pat Schichler. I've been a Penfield resident since 1988. Was on the previous board for over 8 years, I believe. I'm a retiree of 35 years from Monroe County Social Services, which I was a Medicaid administrator and technical writer with focus on training. So I hope to be able to assist in any information dissemination and community involvement and such.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rosanne Cohen. I'm lived in Penfield since about 2000, and I was on the Conservation Board before this for about 10 years, I think. And I'm also a retiree of the county. I was a probation officer for 15 years.
Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel Moore. I've been a resident since 2005. I moved here when I was 3. And I'm an MCC student studying political science with the goal of transferring to study public policy and also environmental science.
I can go next if you'd like. I'm Sarah Waterman. I'm the town sustainability coordinator or sustainability engineer. And I've been with the town, this is actually the beginning of my 7th year. And I'll pass it to Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Valentine, Director of Engineering and Planning. I've been with the town since 2004.
I'm Matt Prinzing, very new to Penfield. I started as a junior planner just last month, but my background, undergraduate in environmental geosciences, and I'm getting my master's right now in geospatial sciences. So, yeah.
I'm Doug Sangster. I'm the town planner. I've been with the town since 2014. Was also a Penfield resident from 2001 until 2017, and graduated from Penfield High School.
Hi all. I'm Debbie Draw. I'm the Deputy Supervisor here in Penfield. I'm actually sitting in for Bob Ockenden, our town board member that could not make it, who is the actual liaison to this committee. I would like to thank each of you on this new committee for your service and your to Penfield, and I'm really excited about this. We're all very excited about this committee. So thank you again.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for doing that. I think that'll help us figure out a little bit of who we are. As we've been paying attention, we're 2 committees, boards coming together, been aligned. It was kind of a recommendation that happened over the course of last year, was to pull us together because we had a lot of like things, and the kind of a little bit of what one team was working on, the other one was interested, and what that team was working on, the other team, so it made sense to pull us together. So leading into that, then, I wanted just to take a minute to be able to talk about a mission I believe the Conservation Board had actually been kind of wrestling with this idea of a mission. And nicely enough, Sarah has come up with a very nice wording of a mission. It doesn't necessarily have to be our final version, but if we like it, we can go with it. But it does at least capture a lot of what we think we should be working on, as well as what some of our responsibilities are. So it's shown in front of us there to promote energy and environmental stewardship. I think that's a good starting point for all of us. I think that's something, it sounds like, within our hearts in terms of things that we want to do. Specifically talking about encouraging conservation of resources, promoting the use of native plantings, advocating for public policies. So those sort of things that we have all been involved in our representative groups, with a goal of sustainable development for the town. It does also capture some of our specific responsibilities, reviewing development projects in environmentally protected overlay districts to make sure that they're in compliance with local and state regulations. So I don't think this has to be something that we wrestle with now, but overall I would just like to know if you're comfortable with that mission statement as it's written for us to go forward for a while.
Looks good to me.
Okay. Thank you. That's good. I don't think we need to vote on it or anything. So, the second component that I had asked Sarah just to pop to the front a little bit was the idea of talking about goals. And once again, I just want to put this in a framework for us so that we know that we, outside of the specific core responsibilities we do have the opportunity to set specific goals for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And once again, within this particular role of, like today with our first meeting, those also do not have to be firmed up, but we do have some specific requirements to cover, and I think I'm making her bounce around a lot here. Sarah's managing the computer for us. Some required items, so we'll want to make sure that those are foremost in our list and in our agendas from month to month. So that's the items, they're bulleted there. Review the development projects with the environmentally protected overlay districts. Now, how do you guys say that acronym?
EPODs?
You do say EPODs, okay. Mm-hmm. And then if town board, planning board, or zoning board request review. So that's specifically for that EPODs?
Correct.
Okay.
So for a basis of if the engineering and planning departments see plans or developmental plans that come through and they are affecting EPODs, then we will automatically bring it to this committee. If one of those decision-making bodies request review, whether or not a project is involving EPODs, we will still review that if the decision-making body requests it.
Okay, that seems, just want to ask if this is, and Doug, if you would chime in, please, seems perhaps just a little bit different in that every application submission was brought to us, and we would look at the significance. If somebody thought it was just a very simple subdivision, then we'd say, okay, we're not going to go out and take a look at it, but we basically looked at every project and as a board made a decision whether it had significance to look at or not look at, and most of them were, it was more on the end of, well, we didn't look at this because it was something very simple, almost a rubber stamp sort of thing. So Doug, am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, that's sort of how the Conservation Board had previously operated, was the planning staff would bring all new applications that were received in for the Conservation Board and allowed you guys to take a look and choose which ones to provide input on, or similar to, as we've proposed here, if one of the other boards, the Planning Board would occasionally make a referral to the Conservation Board to ask for a specific application to be reviewed.
So,
I think this would help streamline, because our public hearing for March is taking 1,000 square feet off of the front of an existing commercial building. Mm-hmm. There's not really a lot of conservation or environmental concern with the renovation of an existing building on an existing pad site, so it would allow the board or the committee to have focus on other tasks.
That's fine. I just want to make sure
It is a little bit of
that
a-
there was an additional filter, it sounds like, that you're placing in that it may not be an EPOD, but we may want to go out and take a look at significant trees, for instance, and that may not necessarily be an EPOD. So that I'm wondering if we couldn't still have the ability to do that. So I feel like you're filtering what would come through and has historically been things that we would review over
And if we know
years.
if we know there's anything that would be of interest, we can do that as well. But as we're consolidating the two committees, we don't have, we're confined in our time frame that we're in. So we've got a
Okay.
4:30 to 6 o'clock time frame.
Right.
We've got a hard stop at 6 o'clock because the planning board
Right.
starts at 6:30. So
Sure.
just knowing we're always going to have that end, we don't have an endless amount of time. So we're just kind of looking to streamline that again, that the ones that we know automatically, it's a parking lot, it's going to be a parking lot tomorrow,
Sure.
kind of filter some of those out, that not every project, would come before this group, just knowing that there is nothing of significance. So just to kind of cull some of those out to streamline.
Okay.
As we've got other new activities for this committee to take a look at.
I would prefer the wording that you just gave it, nothing of significance, versus that it's not part of an EPOD.
And we can add that in. And obviously that's part of tonight's discussion is, where we go. These are the basics of.
Yeah, no, I understand
minimums
that, and I
we've
just
got,
wanted
and
to
then we
bring it
can-
up
Yeah, we
for
can-
discussion because it feels like something different, and I would prefer the wording of, either nothing of significance versus that it's, unless it's part of an EPOD, then you don't have to look at it.
Sure. That's,
I don't know,
And to be
how do
clear-
my
To be
previous...
clear, these are requirements of the town for this committee.
Okay.
So it's not the end-all, be-all of what we're going to do. Just like EEAC previously did a lot with CCA, did a lot with Clean Energy Community. Obviously, that's not within our requirements, but those are actions that the town has already started moving forward on, and this committee will likely also cover.
Okay.
Okay, so that's good to know. So required is ones with EPODs, but we could define another criteria which would capture the nothing of significance for some other ones as the secondary level of.
And as the planning board takes a look at applications, they're very good at saying, even if there's not. So for an example, the Capstone project on Creek Street wasn't in any EPODs. It was one that the planning board referred to the conservation board,
Okay.
knowing that there were existing trees on the site, that there were concerns from the neighbors regarding, potentially doing a tree inventory. It was one that was brought to the conservation
Okay.
board or recommended by the planning board for the conservation board to review, even though there wasn't any EPODs on the site.
Okay. All right, thanks. And I have no problem with saying, this is nothing of significance, so you don't have to talk about it, because I always felt guilty when we decided not to look at something. So it's I've been absolved of guilt, so.
And do consider all of the development plans that come in are being reviewed for environmental concerns through the engineering department as well. So
Okay.
everything will be reviewed with that concern. It's just this is for those higher concern items as a
Okay.
requirement.
I just didn't want it to be limited to that with that wording, so.
Is there a set criteria for what they look at in terms of when they define something as environmental or not environmental?
So do you mean within the engineering department or do you mean EPODs?
No, within the engineering department.
So we have to cover different regulations by the EPA and the DEC as a start. Then from there, we also have to cover things like wetlands, floodplains, and so on, which also fall under EPODs.
Additionally, the planning board and town board and zoning board, as legislative bodies making with actionable, the ability to take action, also have to review things in relation to SEEKR, the State Environmental Quality Review Act, which has its own list of various aspects that the boards have to look at and come to a determination based on impacts.
So are these EPODs, these are defined by the state or defined by our town?
These are adopted by the town, so they're ones that, obviously wetlands, floodplains, stream corridors, or
Woodlots?
well, that's not a state or federal.
Right.
But those are ones that are added by the towns. We added steep slope and woodlots to those. Obviously, wetlands are already regulated by either state or federal, whether Army Corps, DEC. Streams are either U.S. Army Corps, and then obviously floodplains is FEMA. So those ones are state or federally regulated. The town of Penfield adopted those 3 and then added in woodlots and then added in steep slope. So those are 2 that we've added additionally within our community to take a look at. So those aren't prohibited development in those areas, but there's set criteria for obviously additional review, by this group, to take a look at those and then provide any concerns back to planning board, zoning board, town board, if they see some additional concerns in those areas.
And how often are the EPODs reviewed and updated?
The ones by the state and federal, so FEMA floodplains, probably every 10 to 15 years. Not very often. Same probably for wetlands. We have them hosted on our web viewer, so anytime we get an update, we push it up there. They're not updated that often. We've brought the woodlots through this group, I think, every 5 or 10 years. We can look at that as, we kind of do an analysis, and now that we've got Matt on board, that was a GIS function, so look at mapping of those wooded areas and then bring it into this group to kind of review that, see where stands of trees are, and then, re-adopt that. The steep slope areas, they don't really change that significantly. They're there, again, we've got, LiDAR data that shows where those steep areas are, so we've mapped them off those, so those would only come off if some significant development, changed in those locations. So the woodlot's probably the one that's the most adaptable, or obviously trees are continue to grow or get taken down and cleared away. That's probably the most changeable one.
One final question on this, and I'll stop asking questions about EPODs, but are we due for an update soon?
I have to check the last time we did the woodlot EPOD.
So we did a full overhaul of the woodlot EPOD in 2015, where we went through the entire town and updated based on existing conditions at the time. Since then, we have done sort of sporadic updates to the EPODs, specifically the woodlot EPOD, based on ongoing development and just areas that we notice, or getting better information. A lot of our information for that one is based off of aerial imagery that we get through our partnership with the state, as well as organization pictometry. So we've done periodic updates, but we haven't done a full overhaul, I believe, since 2015, or townwide overhaul.
And there's not a mandated time frame. It's just kind of as we've seen development or something this group or the former conservation board thought there was a time or a need for an update. So there is nothing in our code that says it has to be done every 10 years, 15 years. It's just kind of as we see, things are developing, that whether it's time or makes sense to revisit that.
Rosanne and I would have been in on the last woodlot EPOD updates, review by this board, or previous board.
Excellent, thank you. So I think Roy and myself, as probably Danny, would love to learn a little bit more about this process, and I don't know if it's something that you can kind of somehow tap us into so that it doesn't necessarily, the learning part of it doesn't necessarily take this committee's time when we're together. Just because I think, and I don't know whether it's just a matter of you saying, hey, come down and we'll show you the aerial map and what it looks like and walk you through the process or something like that.
We can provide you with the criteria of what they're stipulated as. We can share the web viewer with you. You can look at that, and then, obviously you can schedule a time to come in and, go through it and talk about it further.
Doesn't hurt for us to have a refresher too. As you said, it's, like almost
refresher
8 or 9 years ago.
But I think the web viewer has been a great asset, and those items are in there, and you can toggle through those layers and put those on. So as we're looking at properties, we're not into those tonight, but as we always have someone here, the Conservation Board has done before, bring up the map. We've got it. You can toggle the layers on, look at where the wetlands are, look at where the woodlots are, stream courses, within that. So as part of the review, live as we're going through it, and as well as the information we provide, when you're going out to the field to take a look at a site, we'll give you that stuff ahead of time.
Some magic here.
Is that criteria online so anybody can see it?
Okay.
So if you just send us the links, that's all I need. I can review that.
I think that would be lovely for all of us to be able to start that.
Yeah, and then if anybody has any questions, obviously, any of us are
Right.
well-versed in it and can provide more data.
So I think that'll be one of our kind of quick goals, is for us to figure out how to get that knowledge base so that we can do that and make some of those decisions. And then I think we'll be able to rely on you guys to tell us, yeah, maybe it's time to really refresh some of those or not, but good. Okay. Then the second one is write a formal letter. I'm back to those, the required items here. Write a formal letter to Associated Board summarizing review, and that is associated with that first topic after the review, is to do a formal letter. Okay. And then investigate CEC items, that's clean energy.
Correct. Clean energy communities.
Yes.
I'm sorry, what was the last word? Clean energy
Communities.
communities.
Okay. Regarding value to the environment, value to the town, and investment required, and that's been an ongoing process for the Energy and Environmental Advisory Group. So that's one of our continuing work items. So that'll be another one of those things to bring you guys up to speed on what all of those acronyms mean and to do that. So we'll have to do that. Maybe we'll plan one of those times to really, I don't think that's planned for today, but to do that giant
Like a separate,
overview
we
again.
could have a separate learning
Yes.
meeting.
And I did, ahead of time, share a document of open items that actually have those definitions as well.
Yes.
Just so that if anyone does say an acronym and someone's not sure, either you can ask or refer to that sheet.
And then our fourth required item is to review and investigate items requested by the town board. So that's, I think that one goes without standing. Okay. Okay, oh, good. So I think based on getting to know how we'll function together, covering the requirements is the primary goal, is to maintain our responsibilities. And then secondary, I think we've come up with a couple of short-term goals for us with the EPOD understanding and with the CEC understanding for the entire group. So I think that will be good to go forward with. So then going forward into, is everybody comfortable with that section on the agenda? That's the idea of our mission statement and our goals, and we'll dive into some of the more open items here. Okay. So next is some active items for the Community Choice Aggregation Program, the CCA. This was one of the work products from the EACC over the past couple of years, EEAC over the past couple of years. So are you going to give us an update, Sarah? Thank you.
So just a general understanding of community choice aggregation and the process that the Energy and Environmental Advisory Committee went through. Community choice aggregation is when you pool a large number of residents' energy usage, and you take that usage and go out to bid as a municipality with a program coordinator, a program coordinator, and you get bids on electricity and or gas prices. The Town of Penfield spent a number of years reviewing CCAs and the regulations through the state and determined that it would give residents an option of a fixed rate electric supply choice with a renewable option. So there's two different options that Penfield residents can participate in. There's a 50% renewable hydro energy option and a 100% renewable hydro option. The base option is that 50% with a rate of 5.733 cents per kilowatt hour for your energy supply. And that is the only part of your RG&E bill, essentially, that would affect. That program has now been running for a year and a month. And I have some graphs to show you that kind of show what's been going on and where we are with it. So the first graph is a rates to compare graph, and that shows the fixed rate for our energy usage of the 5.733 cents per kilowatt hour, in comparison to RG&E's variable rate over the last 12 months. So as you can see, the rate has dipped below a couple times, but the majority of the time it's been above, the RG&E rate has been above our program's rate. What that means in terms of savings to residents is that there's been approximately $115 savings per resident over the term of the program. And that means if you've been in the program the whole time, you would, compared to RG&E prices, see $115 savings over those 12 months, as well as have been using 50% hydro rather than the base RG&E mix. I'm going to scroll down, and you can see the greenhouse gas offsets each month. So the blue lines will be passenger vehicles for 1 year. That's essentially if a passenger vehicle, so an ICE vehicle, sorry, no, I don't have the acronym, a gas type vehicle was removed from the road over that year. So for example, in February, the carbon offsets are equivalent to 831 vehicles removed. And that's talking about carbon emissions, so obviously those haven't been removed, but that's just to give residents an understanding of those comparisons. Then scrolling down, the Penfield 50% green option, which again is 50% hydro. We update, well, we have Good Energy, our program administrator, update the website monthly, and we continue to update this graph so that residents can see what the RG&E variable rate comparison is. And that's to give information to residents so they can continue to make an educated decision if they would like to be in the program or not. Next to that, on a different page, this is actually clickable, is an example bill. So if residents aren't sure what they're seeing on their bill to make a comparison, they can look at that and that can help them along. And then lastly is the impact, which kind of shows what our program comparison is to the standard RG&E mix. So obviously this big green area is the 50% hydro, and then there's a breakdown of what the rest of the area is. For example, our program has an 18% natural gas compared to RG&E's, which is a 46% natural gas in the mix of electricity, like producing electricity. So all of these graphs are public and can be seen on penfieldcca.com/program-highlights. If you go to penfieldcca.com, you can click through and find it too.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a question. So we're comparing the hydro version of ours, fixed rate, to a variable rate of RG&E.
Yep.
So is there a way to compare it to a fixed rate of RG&E, so that you have a apples to apples comparison? Because right now it's a little misleading.
So the RG&E does not provide a fixed rate program because the way that RG&E as a utility works is they have to provide a rate, so they're not making money on the supply of electricity. They're just selling it at market rate, which is a variable rate similar to like the stock market going up and down. So we don't actually have a comparison in that regard as apples to apples. We can only compare it in this way.
I was going to say, what if you compared it to because I know you can get a fixed rate not through RG&E, through other providers, other supply providers?
So there are so many ESCOs in New York State, which is my understanding that you're talking about. It's an energy supply company for everyone's benefit. There's so many in New York State that if we were trying, it could take us hours, days. It's not something that's essentially apples to apples because different companies are selling it for different rates, and if anything, we'd be finding an average of different companies, and we can't do that with all of them. We don't have the capacity for that.
And would it be available to us anyways in this area?
I don't actually know.
Yeah, ESCOs are available.
Some of them are, not all
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah.
but-
Not all of them, but
Okay.
yeah.
Is there a time frame? I'm sorry, were you
No,
finished
I'm-
with your question?
I'm done with that, yeah.
Is there a time frame for a resident to opt in? I mean, is that closed at this point, or?
The program lasts until the end of this year, so the end of December 2023. And residents can opt in or out of the program at any time for no cost. So there's no fee for leaving or entering the program. The only kind of small catch with that is there's some processing time. So there's generally a 15-day processing time, so it may not affect your next bill, but it will always affect the one after that.
And residents were opted in to begin with, correct?
It was an opt-out program, so if residents did not
Oh.
want to be in the program, they had to take an action to get out of it. That is because of regulations in New York State. An opt-in program is not allowed for this type of thing.
So everyone was automatically
Got it.
enrolled in this program
Okay.
once the town board decided to take that action. The Energy Advisory Committee reviewed and then advised the town board. The town board took the action, so all of the residents were automatically opted in. It was up to the individual resident, unless you had an ESCO or already, or locked your account or something else, but then it was up to you to take an action to opt out of the program. But as Sarah had shared, for those that have decided to stay in the program, not only are you getting 50% green energy, but you've seen $115 for an average home savings across the course of the year.
Thank you. Okay, the second item related to the CCA program is the town board update.
Yep, so all of that information I just provided you, I actually also provided at the town board meeting on January 25th. So they are also aware of these items. With the result of that meeting was the decision to work with our communications director to kind of publicize that information a little more and share it on social media, which will be coming in the near future.
Is there a timeline? As a group, will we have a responsibility as the second year wraps up?
Yep.
Or the full year, the second year wraps up?
So within this year, there will be the choice to renew the program or not. Within that, because we've already gone through the process as a town of choosing a program administrator, which is Good Energy, for your information, they have the ability as our program administrator to continually go out and request prices. And once they start seeing favorable prices, they'll bring them to us to review, as well as the town board. And when it comes down to it, the town board will have to make a decision if they would like to renew the program based on the information they're provided of what prices and those types of things. If the town board so chooses to renew the program, then we'll have to go through the public notification process again, which consists of sending postcards, having 2 public information meetings, sending a letter to all of the eligible residents for the program. And then once we get through that process and the program is getting ready to restart again, then RG&E will do robocalls to residents, letting them know that this is coming. They'll also do letters letting the residents know it's coming and they're going to be transferred. And then I believe they also send a second letter just to let the residents know what's going on.
But at least we won't be surprised by that this time.
Yep.
So will people have to opt out again, so they'll be automatically enrolled again unless they choose to opt out?
That's true.
Yeah. Where does the hydro come from?
Somewhere in New York State. I don't have more detail than that. It's required to be in New York State.
We could ask Good Energy to
Constellation
help
is there.
provide us with, if we wanted that information, or Constellation.
New Energy is the
Yes, the provider.
provider of the energy.
Yeah, I would
But I
ask
don't know
him.
where exactly it comes from.
I would ask him for the RECs. If you're saying it's 50% hydro and it's renewable, then they should have some sort of certificates that prove that.
Yep.
And I think it's our responsibility to make sure that's happening, make sure the residents are getting what they're supposed to be getting.
I can make that a follow-up item. And for clarity, RECs is REC, that stands for Renewable Energy Credits. Anytime that renewable energy is produced, a REC comes alongside it, and then that is retired once the energy has been used.
Good. Sounds like a good follow-up item. Thank you. Okay, anything else on CCA? Okay, then let's go ahead and move into the CEC, or Clean Energy Community, and what we have going on there.
So since the last energy advisory meeting, we have completed a community campaign on clean heating, cooling, and energy efficiency with the help of Color Penfield Green. And that consisted of having classes on that, as well as following up with residents to determine if they've had energy audits and any follow-up work done on their houses. We also worked with Heat Smart Monroe in that. That is a nonprofit. And we had 5 residents follow up, which meets the requirements for clean energy communities. We submitted that, and it was an approved item. So now we have 3 out of 4 high impact action items for clean energy communities. To be considered a clean energy community, you have to complete 4 high action impact items, so we're on our way to that. With that, by completing that action item, we were allowed to apply for a $5,000 action grant for the town. We did apply for that, and we actually have already received funds, which we will put towards an energy audit for the community center. And we're in the process of getting that set up.
Why was energy audit for the community center selected as the next action?
There were a number of options that are pre-approved for action grants through clean energy communities, and that was one that we found would be beneficial as the town considers the facilities needs.
Does that by any chance count as an action item to complete that?
That will count towards benchmarking, which is an action item.
A little bit of a loop. Okay. And so do we have a next step? Do you have a recommendation for which action item, high impact item, that you think we're going to head toward next?
So we already have a couple in process. The town has dedicated ARPA funds towards LED upgrades for town streetlights. A number of years ago, the town bought all of the streetlights. These are not traffic lights, but street lights. And the town chose to do LED upgrades, which is essentially replacing the heads, not just light bulbs. And we've already had a bid approved for the actual units, but we are working on getting bids for the installation of the units. Having 20% or more upgrades of LED streetlights will cover a high impact action item. We've also begun pursuing benchmarking as one of the high action impact items. That consisted of creating an Energy Star portal and starting to put in our usage information for electricity and gas for our buildings that are over 1,000 square feet. So we started that process. Getting the energy audit for the community center will continue that process. Within that, there's a number of items that we could consider, but I don't currently have a recommendation. If the board has an interest, I would encourage you to look at the high action impact items, and I can send those out.
I think that'll be part of our educational or
Yes, it is.
re-educational process for that, so yes.
What percent of the streetlights have already been converted, and what will this conversion that you've already get allocated, what percentage will it be at completion?
I don't actually remember off the top of my head what we are at now, but my understanding is that we're looking to complete all of them.
So that'll meet the fourth criteria.
They've been replacing them as they've gone out. So as a head or something's gone, they've replaced them now just to convert over. So I think we're at 10 or 15%. So a small, portion of them as they've died or something else, they've been replacing them with LED. But this plan is to replace all of them to go through. So it'll take a significant amount of time, but the town is dedicated to going through and swapping all of the heads out and then converting over to LED. So we'll be fully converted over at the end of this.
So to clarify, it's, you're pursuing more than just the 20%.
Yeah, we're looking to go with all of them. It'll
Okay.
meet the grant easily and then obviously be an overall benefit for the town going forward.
So what happens once we're officially a clean energy community? What benefit does the town get, and what else will we have to do to maintain that?
So part of the reason that the Energy Advisory Committee recommended going for clean energy community status before climate smart status was because there are not follow-up items that are required. There are items that we can continue to address and continue to get more points in the program, which gives us the opportunity to get more grants.
And there'll be like a certification we'll be listed on a website.
So we won't get anything like a certificate, but we will be designated. That's kind of the term they use. And that, yes, we will be listed on the Clean Energy Community website for NYSERDA. We are already listed as a registered town, which means that we've already started pursuing it by completing an action. It does also share publicly what actions we have completed, since we've completed more than one.
Good. Okay. Anything else that you want to hear about the clean energy communities? Okay, good. Then we'll move on to events and items of interest. So we have some whole slew of open projects. So I think we can have you kind of buzz through some of those.
Here's my list. Do you have a list of those or?
I was going to pull them up, sorry.
Okay.
I thought it was on here. Is it on here? Open construction projects?
I don't know if we have that later listed there, but I can just go through the highlight of some of the bigger ones that are going on around town. So just an update, items of interest, Conservation Board is, how things are progressing. So the one that's been going on for a little bit of time is Rocco Pines. That was Evergreen Estates, or it's changed the name. Forest Ridge, thank you. And so those of you remember, Forest Ridge is now Rocco Pines. That's the development taking place at the southeast corner of Jackson and Plank.
What is it? Rock Pines?
Rocco, R-O-C-C-O.
Oh, okay.
Rocco Pines. So that's at the southeast corner of Jackson and Plank Road. You can see kind of just the entry cut in off of Jackson Road. That's phase 2, so they're doing some grading in there. If you come off of Plank Road, the road is in on the Plank Road frontage side. They're working on the pump station now. They actually have a model home up, and they're looking to start sales for that. But the road is in, the utilities are in phase 1. So if you drive in, Sarah's pulling up the map, you can drive in up to the top and then in up to the cul-de-sac. So all of that is in, graded, utilities are in, and then phase 2 is the piece that comes out to Jackson. So if you go down Jackson, you can kind of just see they've just kind of cleared the trees out in that main swath area, and then we'll be starting on the road utilities in this next phase. So that is 72 home units. So that obviously is selling out in phases, but they just have the model up right now. While we're in the neighborhood just across the street, the school district is still pursuing putting their bus garage, and Sarah's highlighting the property. So that's on the northeast corner of the property or of that intersection. The school district is looking to, and I believe it's already been voted in, they're working with the state education department. So that is not reviewed through the town. So that's why it's not been before the conservation board. It doesn't come through Doug or I. So since they're a school district, the state education department approves their project. They kind of just give us an FYI, here's what's going on. But as being a state agency, that doesn't come through the town, so it doesn't come through the planning board, doesn't come through our approvals. They kind of just said, hey, just so you know, this is what we're doing. So they're looking to move the bus garage out of the Four Corners, so on 5 Mile Line, and we'll be relocating it to this location here.
So
it's
who owns the land?
It was sold from Ben Berry, so it was Berry's Turkey Farm. So he is selling off a portion of it. He's retaining his house and barn and a small area, I think 7 acres at the corner. The remainder of the land he's selling off to the school district, and so they're looking to put their bus garage there.
Do you have the right to say that they can't go there, or?
Nope.
No, okay.
Really?
Nope. So
State land at that point, if they sell it to the school?
once you sell it to the school, similar to, we had a state group home years ago that came in, and the state group home came in and said, we're just here as an information meeting, we're telling you what we're doing. Please hold any comments, but this is what we're doing. And they came in and we said, what about the stormwater regulations? They said, we're the state of New York, we understand the regulations, we'll take care of it, don't worry about it. Here's the plans, here's what we're doing. Thanks, have a good night. So this, again, is kind of similar. So it goes to SED, which is the state education department that governs school districts, so they get their approvals through them. And they've shared the information with us and just said, we haven't seen detailed plans, but here's where it's going, here's about where it's going to connect and tie in. Through the transportation committee, obviously, we're looking at that as what future traffic impacts does that have to that intersection. Jackson and Plank are both county roads, so again, we don't have jurisdiction over that intersection, but are monitoring that, and then obviously we'll share any of our thoughts, concerns, with the county, and then obviously the county can look at if additional signalization is needed or how that's handled.
Are there any EPODs in that area?
There are. So there are wetlands in the back. So Sarah's, again, this is our web viewer. So she's clicking on those. So that's bringing up, and these are an indication of the wetlands that are out there. So if we were to review this application, planning board, town board, we'd ask for further delineation of those wetlands so you actually know the limits of it. Our viewer here just is the layers we get from the DEC. So that just tells us, yeah, there's likely wetlands out there. You need an official arborist to go out there, identify them, stake them out. But this at least would give us, or give, this committee, and as well as any of the boards, information to take a look at that. And then as Sarah's kind of going through the EPODs, clicking those on, that's the woodlot that was adopted, by this committee in the past. So, we highlight those. We've shared it with their designers. But again, the jurisdiction does not fall to Penfield or our community, but just kind of highlighting to this group as we've shared with others. So hopefully those at home are watching, listening, just kind of informational for the community at large.
So they would have to follow state wetlands regulations.
They do,
and all of
they're
that, so there's
tied
no
to,
real
they're going to
issues
have to
with
do
that.
stormwater. They're showing ponds on their property, so they'll have to follow all the DEC and EPA regulations for that. But they are going to put up, a larger building. They're looking at how they're going to handle their sewerage. Initially, they were looking at doing a septic system. So they had about an acre septic system. We just talked about the Rocco Pines development, is installing a regional pump station there. So they're now looking at, can they tie into our pump station? That part we can regulate. Obviously, they're tied into our structure, so we can look at and make sure, does that pump station meet the requirements? Does it need to be upgraded? Is there modifications that need to be done based on the amount of flow that they have? Are they putting in a bus wash? What other facilities are in there? So that part, we do have some regulation over, but as far as the overall development, that doesn't come before the town. Probably the other big item, if anybody's driven down Route 250 recently, is the Arbors development. So this was a large mixed-use development. So Sarah's zooming in on that. So Atlantic and 250. So on the west side of the road, if you've been through that area at all recently, they're working on the grading of that. So they've basically, originally we're going to do it in multiple phases on the west side. They've decided to do all of it in one phase. So they're doing all the grading right now. They've taken some trees down. They're working on starting to establish their entranceway, and then we'll be starting shortly on utilities. So they're installing, obviously, sanitary storm within that, and that'll be a mix of housing development. So that'll have residential, commercial, single-family houses, duplexes, apartment buildings. So it's creating a village-like, community on that property. So that if you've driven by, again, for this committee's information as well as the community at large, if that's what's going on there, it is an approved project. We do have plans in-house if anybody wants to see additional information on that.
Are they going to be taking down there's that one big blue house,
They
and
will
there's a house
be.
in the front, too,
Yep.
on Atlantic.
So they've got 2 houses that they own or part of it. So the one on Atlantic, and then the one on 250 is both of theirs. They're doing some remediation on them, so they've got to remediate asbestos and lead ahead of those. But those 2 houses will be coming down as part of this project. I think what else is currently in construction. I know the planning board is looking at some other mixed-use developments further to the south. So they had just approved Penfield Heights, so the parcel across from the YMCA. So if you come out of the YMCA driveway at the traffic light, there's a White House barn across the street. The planning board approved that is going to be the Penfield Heights development. So that should be starting sometime in the near future. They do have some other pending applications before them, but I'm trying to think what else is
And they don't have
in
any
construction.
on the property.
No, they abut a wetland in the back, but based on their property line, they do not touch a wetland on that land.
So that's across the street from the Y and all of that other complex?
A portion of it, yeah. So you come out and it's the house and the barn property, so it was always set up, and there's PED indicators for it. They'll have to add a 4th head on it, so coming out of their development, they'll have a traffic light on their side. So obviously that'll add some additional, we'll say, complication to that intersection. So they'll also be adding a left turn lane on 250 into their development. So that'll be incorporated there. The Arbors piece will also be incorporating turn lanes into their property as phases of that project go along. So you'll see in the future, and they're paying for those betterments. So if you're going up 250, you'll see center turn lanes, as part of the Arbors development, but those kind of get tripped by number of homes in the development and different time frames as once those are built out.
250 is a state road,
Correct.
so is the state planning on widening that road?
No. That's why we're working closely with them. We've hired a traffic consultant to work with us to look at the whole corridor based on this amount of development. So as the mixed-use development builds out, what does that mean for the corridor? What does that mean for timing of traffic lights? What does that mean, or how does that impact adjacent intersections? So we've hired our own consultant, just knowing that this is going to add additional traffic to the road. How is that being handled? They've come up with a concept plan. We've shared that with the state DOT right now. So the state has that under review. Hopefully the state accepts it and says, yes, we like it. Then we look at a model of how does that get paid for. So the developers that are grading the traffic should be the ones that pay for it. So we're looking at a program that if they're not putting in the turn lanes themselves, they may pay into a fund that would help, with that. So it's the state's road. Again, we don't have jurisdiction, but we've funded, having that study done, just trying to be more proactive than reactive. The state is typically more of a reactive agency. Once it becomes a problem, they go, hey, wait, we have a problem, let's study it. And then 5 years down the road or more, let's do something to resolve it. We're trying to take a more proactive approach, look at it ahead of time, say, hey, we see some things are coming up. We're going to need to add some turn lanes. We're going to need to do some widenings. Let's look at it. Is it, how does it meet, bike safety? We're looking through that whole corridor of adding, bike paths within the development, sidewalks within the development. So how do we make it more pedestrian friendly as part of this development? So we've kind of shared that with the state, hope they buy into that. And then once they buy into that, then we can come up with a cost share for some of the smaller developers that their project would never trip a need to, in the state DOT's world, if it's less than 100 units, it doesn't even show up on their radar as needing a traffic study, as needing any sort of impact. we know it does. It may not be huge, but it'll have some impact. So you can look at some of those smaller developments and then have them pay an impact fee that can go into a fund, and then as you get larger down the road, then that can pay for improvements on that state highway.
It would make sense for them to look at this, especially if they're, looking at transportation issues for aging communities and,
Yep. And the state has become much more progressive. I've been happy to see that. In the past, as I said, the state was very reactive. They said, no, this is the project before us. We'll look at this project. Here's the boundary of it. Here's what should be done. And then they'll look at the next one. And the state seemed to be adapting more and is more open to, we said, this whole corridor is going to be developed as mixed use. Mm-hmm. We know it may not happen today, tomorrow, but at some point it will. So let's look at the whole corridor. And they said, that's a great idea. We're happy to, to kind of do that with you. So happy there.
So your study is not just around that development area. You're looking at it from our boundaries all the way to the north.
We're going all the way up to Plank Road. So we're going on Penfield Center Road. So we've looked at Penfield Center Road. We've looked at the impact on Northrop Road, Allen Road, all the way up to Plank Road. So we look at from there and then all the way down to Wayland Road. So beyond the corridor of what is mixed use, how does that impact those traffic lights, those intersections beyond that? The developers look and say, well, I'm just doing this. I'm going to pay for what's out in front of my property. Mm-hmm. We all know that obviously there's ripple effects that's going to impact further intersections, whether that's changing timing of traffic lights, whether additional through lanes need to be added, dedicated turn lanes, turn arrows, other items to make sure that, traffic flows as best as it can. So our scope goes outside of just that hard limit of what the mixed use district is.
Good, thank you. Okay. Next is Shadow Pines.
Shadow Pines, still me.
Good.
So a couple of things to share on Shadow Pines. So currently the town board has been talking about the Clark Barn as well as the Clark House. They do have a meeting scheduled next week. So if anybody, again, here in this group or watching at home, on February 15th, they'll be holding a public information meeting and gathering input from the community. They've looked at some options for the Clark House. So they've looked at keeping the oldest portion of the house. It was, for those that do or don't know, the original house was 1832, was just the portion in the front. There was, again, a 1930s addition kind of in the middle where there used to be the bar, restaurant portion, and then there was a 1980s, 90s portion that was added for the clubhouse in the back. So there's different portions, different ages. So right now the town board is looking at keeping the original 1832 portion and then looking at modifying the back piece and then creating a lodge out of that. So they have a proposal before them. They've hired a consultant, so Bergman Associates has developed a plan for that. I believe it's on the town website under projects of community interest. So if anybody wants to take a look at that. And then next week they're taking input from the community, your thoughts, feedback on what you think of the lodge and how that should move forward. At the same time, we're also working on final development plans for the northeast corner, so at Wayland and Atlantic. So on that corner, the board has been working with town staff and BME Associates on doing a design for a new parking lot, bathrooms, pickleball courts, some potential future playgrounds, so to get an access point off that corner, and thank you, Sarah, for bringing that up. So Sarah's pulling up, so Wayland and Atlantic, so in that northeast corner, is installed, bringing in utilities, bringing in a parking lot, adding a bathroom. And if anybody's been there, there are no bathrooms currently at Shadow Pines property, having kind of a hub area there. So obviously we'll have to do stormwater, but then, looking at adding pickleball, that's been a big demand from the community to add pickleball courts. Looking at, they've master planned areas for future playgrounds, basketball courts, other amenities that could go in there, shelters, with that. But so we're looking at the final part of that, and then we'll be going to the town board shortly to put that out to bid. So hopefully that'll be a summer construction this year.
So just out of curiosity, do we as a group get to look at that kind of thing from a conversion of what we would call potentially open space into?
Yeah, we can share it. It's already, the town board's kind of well on the way on this one, but obviously we can share it as an informational item. But the town board has kind of already authorized what's going on there. That was part of, there was two different committees. So there's the Shadow Pines Land Use Advisory Committee. So that was the first group, is whether do we buy the land when it first came up for sale. That group provided a report to the town board, and then their task was done. Then they created a second committee to say, okay, now that we own this property, what do we want to do with the property? So that committee, again, came up with a report, provided to the town board. The town board said, thank you. We'll accept that in. The town board accepted that, and then worked with BME to say, okay, out of that, we want to see these items. So if you've been there recently, we do have disc golf is already installed and in place. That was one of the recommendations that's already been done. We're still looking and working with some mountain biking on the back nine. That's still out there. And then was the thought to do some pickleball courts or kind of in that northeast corner to kind of leave the rest of it as natural as possible. I mean, obviously, there's going to be some elements there. Was to put that in that northeast corner is closer to two major roadways, put that kind of development there, but to then, have an area for bathrooms. The area currently is used by, well, I don't know about this year, for cross-country skiing. The school district comes over. They use it for cross-country skiing. They do cross-country running meets in the summertime. So to kind of have a parking lot or a base there with bathrooms availability for the community was one of their focuses. So the town board's kind of already authorized that. That's going down that road, but would happily share it with this group so you can see what that looks like.
Okay. I just recall getting a little bit of flack when the disc golf went in about some butterfly habitat, and I just want to make sure that I suspect that both of those teams that put together plans have started to pay
the
it.
town board has reviewed that, and obviously they're looking at, in order to have butterflies, you need to mow. I know a lot of people question, why are we mowing at all? Obviously, you'll get into secondary and, higher growth, so you need to mow in order to keep grasses and habitat, for butterflies. So I know they've been working with the Parks Department on timing of some of that, so that's kind of been on the back nine. But, just for, again, those people, watching, it'll grow into scrub brush, woods, and forest.
Right.
It won't have that if you don't do any sort of maintenance. So there are, specific timing for when you mow, when you don't mow, and how does that happen to, create those habitats.
And Healthy Yards, Monroe County Color, Penfield Green's been working with the town about mowing practices.
Yep, they've been talking to our Parks Department and sharing, their thoughts and, coming up with plans for that.
And mowing plans have been reviewed with them and updated this past year.
I'm part of, I didn't mention that in my introduction, but I'm work with Megan Myers and part of the Healthy Yards Monroe County Penfield subgroup, and I guess they had grandfathers me into Color Penfield Green, even though I don't make their meetings. But just to let you know, historically, we haven't reviewed or had input into town plan developments. It's outside developers seeking to build and putting submissions before planning board and town board that we review.
Okay.
Not that it
Should be
can't
that way.
change, but we would hope the town is doing what it's supposed to do as far as EPODs and
Yeah,
such.
as long as it's vetted. It sounds like it's been definitely vetted by a wide number of organizations, so that sounds good. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we still have time for new business.
I will mention, which I've been updated on since sending the agenda out, there will be another electric vehicle show at the community center this year that is likely to be around Arbor Day, but a specific date has not been publicized yet.
Before you go to new business, the Conservation Board activities or previous, which is the Tree City and Mayor's Monarch Pledge. Thank you.
On a different page.
We're on a different, I don't know, maybe, I'm
okay.
I'm trying to incorporate all these pages.
Those are still items that are in, and we'll make sure you get a copy of kind of the pending tasks and everything else, or the pending items, or the open items. Those are still out there. So those are items that future agenda will have to.
That slightly sounds like old business then.
Well, it's, you had in here update on open projects, so then I went over to the open item summary
Yes.
page, and you
I could
covered.
have been more specific. I apologize. apologize. For events and items of interest, that generally falls under items that are not already under our purview. So I should have written updates on open development projects.
Okay.
But we, if you'd like, can talk about something else if that's.
Well, I guess I just wanted some direction because we left, or maybe we all went direction. We left off that we were pursuing, the previous conservation board was pursuing tree city and tree ordinance. We definitely had plans on that. We were talking about trying to put something together for town board, and the same thing, thinking to pursue the mayor's monarch pledge. And when we left off, there had been some discussion with, or at least Bert had shared with us, that he was of the view that this was, under the town purview and that we wouldn't, we would just be ancillary. But I think some of the members, and I don't know if I'm speaking for both of you, I apologize, but had different viewpoints on that in terms of why couldn't we work on that, in assisting, as an advisory board, because we have spent many years talking about this.
Sure. So I can start by giving you an update about the Monarch Pledge. I personally have actually been working with Megan Miner and our Parks Department to forward the activities that we're looking to pursue with that. As just this past week with the supervisor's resignation, we are reviewing what items are of immediate priority, and we need a little bit more feedback from the town board if they would like to formally pursue that this year or formally pursue it next year. So we'll check in with that. That's an open item on my personal agenda that I've been working on this past year. For Tree City, the town board, I believe, spring last year is when they acknowledged that they would like the town to pursue that and do an investigation into it, which is, I believe, is what formally prompted the conservation board to start taking actions. And that is definitely something that's still on the agenda, but we still need a little more feedback from the town board on what the timing of that is.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because I know Bert's view differed from Jim Almstead's view, and I'm not sure that it was in line. I'll speak for myself. It doesn't fit with my view of what this board could be doing in assisting achieving these goals. And Daniel, do you have a thought on that? I don't want to be the one doing all the talking here from this section of the board.
I definitely agree that our board could be doing, or at least taking part in the writing of it.
So some of those actions, the town staff will definitely have to address, like where the budget is coming from.
Sure.
Because there's funds that need to be defined as allocated towards that. Within that, policy and those types of things, we can revisit that once we get more direction from the town board.
Okay, because I know one of the meetings, in fact, I think Mark was with you and Jim and our previous Doug, I forgot her name, Catherine. We had talked about, there's a lot of things that the town is currently doing and labeled a certain way that we may already be meeting some of the things for Tree City. It's just that they have to be called as such. And so I wanted to say, for my part, I'd like to continue to be part of it. And I can see, of course, it goes without saying, you have to work with the departments that would be doing this, because we certainly can't make plans for a department to say, oh, you should do this, when they haven't had their input, if it's, feasible or where the money's coming from. But for the years that Rosanne and I especially have been working on guidelines and tree policy, we'd like to continue to be involved in that.
Okay, we can voice that, and like I said, once we get the feedback, I believe that would be when we would take actions again.
Okay, all right, that's fine. I just didn't, I can see, obviously, all those things need agreement from the staff and town board, but I don't see any reason why we can't help to develop it.
Definitely.
Are these defined programs that Roy and I can find online to? He's nodding.
Tree
so
City
he's-
USA.
Okay.
is that one, and then the mayor's Monarch Pledge is the other one.
Okay.
And those are also written out on the open item summary that I sent out prior to the meeting.
Okay.
I believe that's item 2 and item 4.
Good. Thank you for bringing that up.
Well, it's something we had all been wrestling with and working on, in our, he had a lot of change and such going on before December.
So are there, kind of peeking at that list, are there any updates to electrical vehicle charging stations that we really, other than what's written here, or?
I can expand on those a little bit. We are working with the DPW to get another EV station installed at the town hall that will be kind of on their timeline of work, basically. Right now, obviously, trucks are equipped with plows and they have a slightly different focus than the charging station installation. And then we're supposed to find out this first quarter of the year if we receive the ZEV grant to install stations in the Four Corners area.
Okay.
I did put down the Monroe County Environmental Management Council. Previously, Bert Gorton was the representative from this committee, and now it will be Daniel Moore. And thank you, Daniel, for attending those meetings. We very much appreciate that. Moving on from there, we did talk about the streetlight project and plan review. Those are kind of the formal item updates that we did not already address.
Okay. Good.
And the sustainability code is still being drafted.
Yep. So we've been using the draft NYSERDA code to start, and we're continuing from there.
Okay. Do we have anything else that we want to consider as specific new business, things that, different trajectories that we want to go on? I mean, I think we have some educational opportunities for us as a team, and some business that will be continuing, so.
And for follow-up, to be clear, I will be sending out to the committee the high action impact items for clean energy committees, as well as a link to the town website where it addresses the plans for Shadow Pines in the northwest section, the northeast section of Shadow Pines.
Yep.
As well as provide information on the process for EPOD updates and determinations. That will be my follow-up action items for this committee.
And then the other one was to figure out how we can get the verification of the recs from the.
Oh, yes. I just need to start that. Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
In future meetings, maybe, not time for it today, but our representative to the EEC always gave a report on what they learned in the past, at the meeting. You meet monthly, right,
Thank you.
Daniel?
That's helpful.
And so, because it's, not just to have a representative there, but what do we take away from that might be activities that this board would get involved? Should we be calling ourselves a board or a committee?
It's a committee.
Committee, okay.
Yeah. So generally,
Because we were always conservation board, so
for all of the formal boards in the town, those are decision-making bodies, and the committees have been advisory committees, and that's why it was chosen to move forward with committee with this title.
That's fine.
I will add that as an action item.
That's excellent.
To
Good
the
idea.
agenda for the future.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, and the other thing is we probably need to start discussing tree sapling giveaway, because what time of year is that again? Spring, but it's early
Arborist
spring.
Day, usually April.
April. So, because a lot of times, this is February already. Doug, you can help me out here.
Monroe County Soil and Water Conservation District has published their order list.
Because we have to order before things get snapped up, and decide what we're going to be doing, and I think the time is.
Especially if there's a member of the committee that would be interested in helping run that, that'd be very helpful.
Yep.
How did that happen last year, and how did that happen?
Catherine, which was our junior planner at the time, was very excited about that project and ran it and had committee members participate in person that day. And I'm not sure about what the participation was beforehand.
Okay.
Usually a member was designated to run it. It typically was Bert. Last time it was Jeff and Daniel, and it's mostly getting the order in through, well, it was Catherine last time making us aware and decisions on what it was we wanted to do, looking at the plants available and what did we want to purchase and get, or did we want to do it at all sometimes.
Last year was definitely the largest we've done in.
So
at least
Well, it was
as
in
long as I've been
coordination with a couple other things that were going on that day, right?
here. Yep. So we did it as part of an Arbor Day proclamation.
And we also invited different community groups to
Yeah.
table.
Yep. So I think the Rochester Museum and Science Center was there doing a demonstration on.
Healthy Yards Monroe was also there.
Erosion.
And I believe maybe Color Penfield Green.
I don't remember if they
I
had a
don't
joint
remember.
booth or how they
Yeah.
did. They were giving a little, having a little plant giveaway as well. And there was a big planting of the Peace Grove, the red maples. And also the grant that we received under Tree City, there were 4 larger red maples planted.
Yep. This was at Rothfuss Park.
Sorry, thank you.
Yep.
Was this, in the past, it's also been aligned with some rec department activities? Does it fall under that bailiwick at all, or is it always?
Last year, it didn't time out because they had, we didn't have it on Arbor Day, so they had some, the EV charging portion takes place, or the car show takes place at the community center. Obviously, this was at Rothfuss Park, so it was a little remote from that. So we'll have to see how things would time out, or, can we?
And in the more distant past, we timed it with the Penfield Good Neighbor Day. So we ran it out of the community center, and it was the same day. Groups are coming in and going around town and cleaning up trash and things. And
Then we have bicycle drop-off one
Yep.
time and something with light bulbs.
I think it was CFL light bulb recycling.
So we have time, except not
A
to
little
order-
bit, not much.
Trees need to go soon.
I think the order has to be in by when?
I'd have to take a look at the
Okay.
order form. I don't remember the date off the top of my head.
Well, you can just,
How do
you can
we-
just really look at whatever we ordered last year, and, I mean, it's,
Did we have extra money? Is that, there was a grant or something that gave us a
Last
boost?
year, we had the grant that bought the 4 big trees.
Oh, okay.
So we don't have that grant this year. So last year, we took the funds, this committee has a budget line, so we took that and bought the trees out of that budget line.
And
Okay.
those were bare root saplings.
Yeah,
Which
those
it
were the
typically always
giveaway.
is. I mean, typically it
That's what we
always
get from
is.
county.
Yeah, that's what's available through the soil and water.
And they disappeared we didn't end up with a
I think
surplus
Catherine
or
took home
anything?
3, so I think that was a
Yeah.
pretty good amount last year,
Okay.
with all that we had.
Did we advertise or
Yep.
communicate?
Lots.
Yep,
that's-
yeah, we had stuff on the website. We
Girl
had-
Scout troop, maybe Boy Scout troop that came in.
Yep, Catherine had signs around town at intersections. She did quite a good job last year advertising that, so it was a well-attended event.
She definitely took
Actually,
the
she got a
big heavy lift on.
shout out, and I think Urban Forestry has a magazine, and there are pictures in there, and we can share that. That just came out the other day. I saw that.
It's
So
on the town website.
on the town website, it shows the event, and they highlighted our event in their magazine.
Did we demonstrate how to plant the bare root trees?
Yep. So the Parks Department was on site, so they were there helping the students or families, plant the trees, stake them. If they wanted to plant them on site, or obviously people took them home with them and planted their own. And as well, they had a nice demonstration on how to actually plant a larger tree, so a bald and burlap tree. And they had some videos of that, so PCTV was there. And I'm sure there's stuff on our website showing how to plant a larger tree on your property, what to do, how to handle that.
And with the trees, we also gave out directions so that when they were at home, they could refer to those.
It sounds like, it sounds like we need to look at the tree list and get that part done. Is that is there a way that that's an automatic, or
I mean, I guess decide first if this committee wants to take that on. You know, do we want to do the Bare Root giveaway? It wasn't an every year item that was done in the past. It was done every couple of years.
Yeah, every couple of years.
So I think last year Catherine kind of had a.
I'm kind of feeling like since we're in a transition mode, are we, and cutting it close? If you do something, we want to do it well. Are we?
The time frame is a little tighter right now. I think again, I have to look at the order form. I think it's by early March is when the order.
So I think last year the grant kind of prompted it, and we had the planting for the 4 trees. So we had the grant for that. So I think Catherine kind of took that and ran with it. I think maybe if we're not doing it this year, it's something we could look at next year.
I wonder if we could take a buy this year.
Start in a little earlier in December
Yes.
and kind of plan out a bigger event to go with that.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, that
As long
sounds
as there is some sort of activity planned, because I think I'd feel guilty if there was.
So at minimum, the EV car show is going
Yes.
to be close to, if not on, Arbor Day.
Okay.
And I think
It's the 28th is
I'm
Arbor Day.
sure the rec department always has some activities or
Okay.
events going on with that, or as they said,
Okay.
the bike drop-off or some other events for.
So you could always do something on World Environment Day.
That's in
We
June.
we can look at it.
June 6th, yeah.
We
The
just
only thing
wouldn't get the
is
trees.
That's too late for trees,
The
though.
saplings are a one-time a year from the Soil
Yeah.
and Water, but we could do a different event.
A different event, yeah.
So there's something that we could join with. I'm definitely still involved, but Color Penfield Green and Healthy Arts Monroe County has the 2 pollinator gardens planned at the rec center, and I'm a part of that. In fact, I've been taking classes, and Jeff had been a part of that, and so they're working on developing and planting the pollinator gardens at the library. There's a shade garden under the tree.
Isn't Megan actually facilitating that with
Oh, yeah,
a couple
she's
of
doing
classes?
with-
Isn't she facilitating
Yes,
the
and I'm-
classes and they're participating during the class?
Yes, and
Okay,
I'm
cool.
in one of the classes, but I'm saying it's hard to say where one thing ends and another begins. It's definitely not under this board's purview, but it's something that's going on there, and Bert kind of left it like, well, those that are interested in participating in that, and I'm definitely one of those people. If need be, maybe not need be, but any other interest, could get more, involved with it as well, but I'm definitely a conduit or liaison to that group.
Okay, excellent. Good to know.
And if you're interested, we can send out the dates to those classes if you're interested in pursuing.
Yeah, I think the next class is already filled, the one for February. It went fast.
It's a good problem.
That's designing native pollinator, and you can only sign up, like 1 month in advance at the library, but Megan's looking at seeing if there's any way to get a second class, because there is definitely a waiting list. But certainly when it comes time to work on it and dig and.
Okay. Well, it looks like we are actually coming very close to fulfilling all of our time, which I was sure we would not do.
I'm a talker, I'm sorry.
That's really okay, because you've definitely added some things in that we need to keep on our radar, so I really appreciate that. Is there any closing comments from anybody?
So I did just look up the tree and shrub program. Orders are due by March 3rd for distribution on April 21st and April 20th, which is a week before Arbor Day.
Okay.
I would like to say thank you for your quick responses to emails and for being a part of this committee. We're really excited for the combination and the future of it.
I guess I do have one other thing to say about education. So for the Conservation Committee, there's a series of classes that were offered every year. It's not always the same class. Is that, I know they've been at
Yes,
MCC.
That's
and-
through the Monroe County Land Use Training Program. It's put on by County Planning and Development. They generally do a spring and fall series. I'd have to take a look. I think we're through the spring series. I think they've already advertised those out. I think they did them in the beginning of February and the end of January this year as online webinars. But they usually also do a fall training series as well.
Are there none of them in person anymore, or since COVID?
They were a mix. If I remember correctly, this last series, most of them were being done on Zoom. I think because they can get a larger audience. but I can take a look and forward any information we
I
receive
wonder if
on
they
those
record them and
programs.
you could catch them anytime.
I can take a look and see if they have them for distribution.
So I've,
Oh, sorry. As we get notifications, we can send that information out too. That's not a problem.
Yep, I
well,
typically
I've
try to forward them when I can.
taken almost all of them, as probably has Roseanne over the course of the 10 years. I mean, I probably wouldn't mind having a refresher now. And so in that regard, I'm wondering if there are a like series of classes for the other section of our committee for the energy and such.
There's one that was just, there was one program that was just done where they were talking about, was it battery storage, and they did solar.
There were a number of classes that we just had recently that were on battery storage code and on emergency services for that, as well as the solar code. For the code ones, not the emergency services ones, I did attend that, which is actually helpful in developing the sustainability code.
Yeah, I would say if we can provide information on the things that we're using as our buzzwords, though, you know, the CEC and the climate smart, which is the
vocabulary,
one that we're not actively working on, you know, just so you're kind of aware of that framework. So we'll add those in. Okay. Anything else? I don't want to close this before we're done. Okay. I believe at this point in time, we can say that our conversation is done, and I'm going to say that our meeting is closed.